Hello and welcome to Own Your Health with me, Katie Brindle. And today on the podcast we have a brilliant guest called Rebekah Brown. And Rebekah is the CEO and founder of a fantastic brand that we are very proud to be associated with called Liminal. Now, Liminal are sponsoring today's show, but as everybody who knows this show, I will only talk about brands that I think you should be interested in. So there's nobody trying to coerce their way into the think tank that is Own Your Health. So even the sponsors have something interesting to talk about, and Rebekah is no exception. So, Rebekah, it is so lovely to have you on the show. Now, we've met a few years ago. We've had a few virtual conversations. We always get terribly excited. And then all of a sudden, we spoke again. So can you just give everyone a bit of a background as to who you are, why I love you so much, the brilliance that is Liminal, and why we love to have this product on our show, and how you came into being a CEO and founder as well. So,
gosh, not much to cover.
No, I'm going to sit here and drink tea. You can talk now.
So I'm so glad that we're finally actually in a room together, because this is the first time we've actually physically met. So this is a treat in itself. But in terms of answering your question as succinctly as I can, I am a narrative researcher by trade. So I'd spent my career listening to people, really collecting stories. That's kind of what narrative research is about, and love my job. I work within the sort of advertising world, so I was kind of doing a lot of future trend stuff, and had got to a point in my career where I felt relatively comfortable in my own skin. And at the age of about 43, I went from feeling good to feeling suddenly sort of outside of myself, and actually outside of the world as well. And huge anxiety, terrible imposter syndrome, which is actually probably the most crippling thing, that sense that you are not really worthy of everything that's gone before, and not very helpful within your family setup. And my hair was falling out, I had hormonal acne, I'd put on a lot of weight, and like many women, I did what we always do, which is just work harder. So, pushed myself through. I was getting up at 5 o'clock to kind of rehearse what I'd say in the lift, because I also had terrible brain fog and cognitive function issues. And as a researcher, that's not very helpful, in the sense that I just couldn't hold the data I had in my head either.
So common. Women talk about this all the time. It's so frustrating.
It's and I look back on it and just think, obviously now you join the dots together, and I'm very lucky that I'm in a community where I hear these stories and I understand what's happening to me. But at the time it was really frightening, and I think this is 7-8 years ago now as well. And the word perimenopause, it just didn't exist. It wasn't something I'd heard of. And I think because I was also, which is very common for many of us as well, I was struggling with all kinds of things in my personal life. My father was very ill. I had teenagers, all of the usual.
The husband, the self, the parents, the kids, the job.
Dog.
Yeah,
yes.
and the dog. I forgot about the dog. Oh, doggies. They give so much back, though.
They do. And I never really sort of hold that kind of GP consultation responsible, because when I look at how I was, it was very natural almost to join the dots and go depression or burnout, which is what I was told. And within
midlife crisis.
Yeah, and within our community, it's incredibly common. Women get diagnosed with this all the time and offered antidepressants instead of hormone therapy or other modalities, and that's what happened to me. And I think the thing that saved me bizarrely was that I was a researcher, and so I kind of sat in that doctor's surgery and I thought, do you know what, it's not depression, but also it's largely not depression, because some days, and I'm sure this will resonate as well, I could run a small country. I was like, some days I was absolutely on fire, and I had all of this energy and everything was right. And
because everything's going like this. So 1 minute it's fine, and then the next minute it tanks right back down again.
So it's not that kind of, view of depression where you kind of have this consistent, incredibly low mood. It was like you say, it was like a roller coaster. And I started looking into what else it could be, and I think because I'm a researcher, one, I don't mind data, I love it, and two,
oh God, come and live my life for me.
And two, I'd spent my life listening to people, so I just started hustling my way into things like functional medicine conferences and talking to graduates who were coming out of medical school, and then exploring areas I'd never really looked into before, because I am a natural skeptic as a data bod. So looking into complementary practices, learning more about acupuncture, learning about botanicals, and obviously discovered the thing that no one had told me about, which is that we go through this thing before menopause, which is actually far more significant, and that it typically starts around the age of 42, 43. So I was bang on actually statistically, but also that our hormones are this superpower that we have as females, and yet we're not taught how to harness them. And so in a very long-winded way, that's kind of how Liminal began. I started getting better. I started working with practitioners from all kinds of different walks of life.
Sorry, how did you get better though? Because you hadn't created Liminal at this point.
No, I hadn't.
So what did you do?
Well, there's a lot of very unpleasant concoctions taking place in my kitchen. So I bought a dehydration machine, which was a whole nother little rabbit hole to go down. Started dehydrating sort of herbs that I was reading about, and also whole foods, things that I knew that I needed to get onto my plate, but were impossible to eat the volumes that were being sort of studied within these documents that I was reading about. I also started looking at how I was digesting stress, which I think is so key. So I learned that my hormones were impacted by what's happening on the outside as well as what's going on the inside, and I was leading an incredibly stressful life, as we all do.
We all do.
Yeah.
And that's what's so relevant about this, is that when we hear stories such as yours, when you've come up with an answer, which is so important for everyone, is to recognise that we're not alone in this. And I think very much the 20th century narrative is you're not conforming to the narrative. This gorgeous, beautiful, sexy person is, and they've got this thing, and you need to buy this thing, and then you're going to be okay. And the 21st century is taking away that isolation and going, actually, thanks to things like Instagram and podcasts and all the other social media platforms, that we can start sharing these stories and going, we're all going through this. I don't know many people that aren't, but the good news is, rather than sort of bashing the problem, is that people like you come through with really good solutions, which is what I do with my menopause fact sheet. It's like, hang on, we don't need to keep moaning, we've got solutions, and we went through the eye of our needles so that we could then move forwards to help. So you're there, like drying up herbs, basically. What's it called again, the machine?
It's a dehydration machine, if anyone's interested. Yes. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend doing it.
I had one.
Yes.
I did it.
Did you do it?
Well, with kelp and things. It didn't last long.
No.
It was the kids were like, Mummy, this is absolutely disgusting. Can we stop?
It does. Yes, all of those things. And just the sort of vague smell of pond water most of the time in the kitchen. But so I did that for quite some time. And then, I mean, you're absolutely right. It was, in a weird way, it was going out again and using my narrative research muscle. And I tiptoed onto Instagram, which obviously I had to be shown how to use at the time.
Oh, didn't we all?
And
ladies and gents, my first Instagram live is still on YouTube. It's so bad. I'm literally peering at the screen because I can't see it properly, going, is this what I pressed? And it's like, hi, my name's Katie Brindle, and I'd like to do some qigong. And I look such an idiot. But anyway, I put it up there because it's really funny.
And also, we all, I mean...
Look what happened with it.
Look at you now.
Look if they could see me now. Anyway, back to you.
Oh, no, but I mean, you're right. So I tiptoed on very naively, and the hilarious thing about most of the research I'd done up until this point in my life is you kind of have to bribe people to tell you things, because you're often working for big fat brands and you're wanting to know what the future of cars are, or what the future of footwear is. And so I kind of thought, I'll tiptoe on, I'll just see whether anyone else here is feeling like me, because it feels like you're sort of publishing into a void, doesn't it, when you first go onto Instagram. And I was inundated, and that had never happened to me as a researcher. And also just... it still makes my sort of me tingle to think about it, the generosity of women, which I think you will agree with. So I tiptoed onto Instagram. I asked people to share their stories, and I expected the kind of yes, no, and then you have the free text fields that no one ever fills in because they can't be bothered. And they went on and on and on. Like, people just gave me their whole story and what they wish their younger selves had known, and what they learned, what worked, what didn't work. Their frustrations, their hopes, and also those that were further along on the journey, the liberation that can come if we find a route through to part 2 where we're feeling looked after. And I kind of had that moment where I thought, you know what, if you could take the wisdom that women carry in their bones inherently, that we're often told not to listen to, and if you could smash it together with all these amazing people that I was talking to, complementary practitioners who are all talking about women coming into the clinic with the same symptoms and the same, same challenges, along with medical practices, you could co-create as a community, but you need women's voices in it. Women have to be, as messy as we all are, as individual as our stories are, we need to be part of the solution. And so that's kind of what Liminal does. We co-create with our community. So we formulate really interesting botanical blends, but we also sort of layer up with educational programs where we're inviting people to explore breathwork, acupuncture, Chinese medicine practices, also get to know your doctor, understand how to use that GP appointment well in a way that I didn't, and advocate for yourself, explore hormone therapy, but feel that you've got agency. And I think, to your point, when we're together as a community and we're sharing these stories, that enables us to kind of take that power back. And that's what I really hope we can do with Liminal as a sort of co-creative community.
So before we talk about the actual product itself, the thing that there's many things I love about you, which is why you're here, but the thing that I struggle with the kind of menopause sort of manifesto kind of agenda that seems to be out there at the moment is it's quite negative and it's quite problem focused. Now, after the last sort of probably 10 to 20 years, we are fully aware of the problem. And the thing that I love about, say, my fact sheet or the messaging that I talk about the menopause, that according to Chinese medicine, the actual truth of this moment in our life is not necessarily about the negativity around it, although I'm fully sympathetic and we are discussing that, is the positive message of it, is that there are 3 archetypes to the female. The maiden, the mother and the matriarch. Now let's just go back a second, because the thing about the matriarch is she hasn't had much of a look in for quite a long time, because basically she's very threatening to the patriarchy. No disrespect to anyone, but this is just the system that we've inherited that we're breaking down at this moment in time, of which menopausal symptoms are such a huge thing. So the reality is that the maiden was something that, you know, the patriarchy liked because that was the virgin. So we like that because that's all about sex and that's all about innocence and that's all about basically kind of being a property to the person that you were attached to, which in the olden days was basically a man. So that was that. Now, the maiden was fine, so that was okay. The mother is also okay because she is the bearer of the child, hopefully the son. And it was only until the sort of early 19th century that the great Western doctors discovered that women actually had a contributing factor to the production of the child other than being the vessel of sperm, which is how we were considered up until only then. And then what happened was, because we burnt all the witches and basically loads of women died in childbirth, not many women got to the matriarch point. Now, what's happened in the last 100 years is 2 things. Is one, the average age is 19. No, it's not. The average mortality age has massively and exponentially increased. So that's gone from sort of roughly, forgive me if my statistics not quite right, roughly 45 to roughly, I think it's like 78. But it's changing all the time. So it's sort of give or take 80. I'm now saying 100. If you're looking after your health, you can easily live till you're 100. So in the last 100 years, that has massively shifted. Now, what's also happened in the last 100 years is the rights of women, because, you know, we're recording this in 2024. Well, only, you know, 110 years ago, we were only just getting the rights to vote. We didn't even have them because that was, you know, 1914. We didn't have the right to vote at that stage. So in just 110 years, the journey of the female has been to be basically a chalice and an appendage to the masculine narrative, to having the right to your vote, the right to your finances, eventually the right to your opinion, just about, which is what podcasts are about, the right to your career, and therefore the right to your autonomy. Now, the thing is with that is it's brilliant, but we've paid so far a very high price, which is our kidneys. Now, our kidneys are responsible for the transition from mother, which we are now all transitioning out of, even if you don't have kids, into the matriarch, because the matriarch is the post-menopausal archetype that we all get to become, as long as you've lived beyond 45, which most of us are. Now, all of a sudden, that's become terribly interesting because we didn't have that many examples of really dynamic matriarchs, because there aren't many women in history that have been allowed to push through and own the matriarch space. So what's happened as a society is we, as women of our generation, have come through the moaning menopause moment, which is just kind of like, oh my God, this is horrendous because your kidneys are exhausted, to I'm all alone in this is horrendous, this is awful. But the light within this is that brands such as yours, messages such as mine, there's other brilliant brands out there, are coming out with a really positive message saying, hang on a minute, once we've got these symptoms under control, we can get to the light and the excitement of this, which is the other bit that your brand is all about, which we will come onto shortly, which is these amazing parties, which I'm gonna tantalize you with that first, ladies, because we'll come back to that in a minute. But that's what this is all about. It is a celebration of the solution, and that's what this is about. Your brand is about, I'm about. It is a celebration of the solution, because the exciting thing at this point in history is solutions are coming through.
Yes.
And they're not just HRT. HRT is one of many options that you were talking about and researching and going through to come through. So we're going to talk about the social party aspect of what you do. I'm so excited about that. But can we just go back to the product and talk about, well, what's in Liminal? What is it?
Yeah, so
we should be having something to wave about, but we didn't. But it doesn't matter.
We'll have to do that another time.
Yes,
we'll
this is an audio
platform.
platform, so we can sort of rustle bags around. So tell me.
So
and it changed brand name as well.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so what's this?
So with the formulations, they are basically naturopathic, whole food led supplements. There are 2 foundational powders, one which is based on sort of a lot of research around those symptoms that show up at the beginning of our perimenopause journey and really harness the power of herbal synergy to support our bodies. And you're absolutely right, about 60% of our community will take hormone therapy as well. But also,
so you can take it alongside.
You can.
Do you need to speak to your doctor first?
I always suggest that you should speak to your doctor full stop, because I think there is an element with menopause where I completely agree with everything you say. It's so fascinating. You're talking in terms of the kidneys and obviously the liver as well, because a lot of our formulations look to support those organs specifically for all the things you're saying. But it's so interesting, isn't it, with Chinese medicine when you look into the sort of the archetypes and what sits behind that, because I think it's so empowering.
So it's first kidneys, second liver,
it's
and
amazing.
Of course Liminal hits straight in on both organs.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's fascinating. So those formulations have been developed with a naturopath and herbalist called Dr. Martins, who was really the thing that unlocked for me my route back to getting well, because she had spent most of her career actually as a cancer biologist in the lab, and then had fallen in love with plants, which I think so often happens to people.
I've just come from a launch with the Naked Pharmacy, and it was exactly the same. The guy that set that up had come across from Big Pharma and fell in love with plants and thought, ooh, what are we doing with all this synthetic medicine?
Yeah, and I think the wonderful thing about plants and Mother Nature generally is it is a synergistic process, and we're rooted in it and we're of it. And if we can get these herbs working together, that's really what Liminal is designed to do. So it takes those whole food-led botanical ingredients with actually some really good science-backed insights. I think that's sometimes the misconception, that these botanicals don't have support behind them. They may not
do. They may not have millions and millions of pounds.
No,
but
this is the challenge. They do.
They're true,
and a bit like Chinese medicine, so often it's generational wisdom that's been handed down as well, and they're existing and used today because they've been used for generations for some of the symptoms and the support mechanisms that we need. So our foundational powders are designed to be just that. We're not a silver bullet promise, and the community is absolutely key, because we know that just like with medicine, if you're not looking at how you digest stress and how you're living, anything you put into your body isn't going to work as well as it should. So the blends are there as a foundation layer. We do product impact studies with our community. We're constantly refining and learning, because science doesn't stand still. So that really excites me as a researcher as well, that new components have been brought into our blends because new research has come to light, but also the feedback we get all the time ensures that we're truly as efficacious, as a small brand as we can be. That's where all of my love of the data goes back in, because I want to be putting stuff out there that can make a real difference. But we're learning, we're filling that data health gap. And I think, to your point about being alive at this moment in time, the other thing that really excites me about what Liminal has set out to do is that, it's that thing where you imagine a world where women are well. Can you imagine what we would achieve if we were well all the time? Because so often it's not just the fact that we've not lived to this point to fulfill that kind of archetype. It's also that the systems that exist in society, we're other. We're always other. And I think that's what's amazing about community, is that women instinctively navigate the world through the stories they tell each other and through the lights that we leave behind for the people that follow. Yeah, and if you can harness that.
So it's a powder.
It's
so
2
it's not
powders.
capsules.
So
how does it work? How do you dispense it?
So there's 2 powders. So the Peri-Boost and Menoboost are both whole food led, 36 plus ingredients, very complicated, and I'm told very frustrating to make. I don't think I'm very popular with my manufacturer. I'm just like, but it works.
Don't
He's like,
care.
yeah,
we care about the
exactly.
About the consumer.
It takes a long time to make stuff.
Yeah, you should see my poor team. Honestly, I've broken many people over the years.
It's
like, but it's still not right. No, Katie, please. This is version 20.
Yeah, but I think that kind of artisanal approach is absolutely key when you're trying to change things.
It's got to be perfect.
Yeah, and 2 powders and then 2 powdered capsules, and the capsules have been really interesting to me because they are.
And they're the same thing.
No,
it's a set. You take it all.
So you take the Peri-Boost sort of from your early 40s, and then as you head to your menopause anniversary into post-menopause, which obviously is the rest of our lives, you take Menoboost, and so those are 2 foundational powders that kind of, unless you're on a medically sort of prescribed vitamin or mineral, they give you that brilliant foundation layer, and most of it from the food as well. So it's far more bioavailable than many of the stuff that's in the supplement aisle. And then the capsules are focusing on cluster symptoms, which is like all of the research we've done and all of the amazing feedback we've had over the last few years with consumers tracking their symptoms. Unsurprising, this will not surprise you at all. What we began to see is, because of the hormone pathways, certain symptoms show up together, right? So if you're not sleeping, you're going to be anxious and your cognitive function is going to struggle as well. And so Mood Food was the first capsule to come out of that insight, really looking at a very sort of focused formulation that looks to support that cognitive function and anxiety and sleep. So it's got ashwagandha KSM 66 in it, it's got bacopa, it's got some really beautiful herbs in it. And then the other one is our newest one, which again came as a result of a lot of insight into gut microbiota changes in menopause. And there's some really interesting large studies now looking at how our gut microbiota is impacted by our menopause transition and also our metabolic rate. So often we find ourselves struggling with weight around our middle, but also we become intolerant to food. We may have reflux, bloating, things that we haven't had before as a result of this transition. And that blend is a prebiotic formula, which is quite unusual in the space because I think we've learned a lot about probiotics, but most medical practitioners and certainly most naturopaths and nutritionists would advocate for prebiotics as a gentler form to actually get your body to do what it should do, so it can work out how and what it needs from its own gut microbiota rather than you putting the bacteria in. So those two capsule formulations can be taken with the foundational powders.
So in today's episode, we're very excited to be partnering with Nature's Answer. Now, Nature's Answer is a brilliant wellness brand, which I'm very excited to talk about because they have hundreds and hundreds of formulations and they don't just offer them as capsules. Now, I find not everybody likes taking powder-based, capsule-based supplements. Some people can't cope with them. Some people are already taking quite a number of them. So I always think it's quite useful to take supplements in different shapes and guises because it helps you sort of cross-reference against different things, because many of us wish to take various different things for various different reasons. So Nature's Answer, they use gummies, they use droppers, they use all the different variations of how to get these supplements into your body. So I find that very useful. And they also, clues in the name, pretty much have the answer to pretty much everything. But today I want to talk particularly about a particularly useful, sorry, I'm going to say that again, I've said that twice. But today I want to talk about a particular supplement that they offer, which is called UT Answer. UT standing for urinary tract. Now, urinary tract infections are one of the major causes of misery, and it comes in my clinic a lot. And often people refer to antibiotics as a solution. That's absolutely fine. But many people then struggle with the solution because they have to find themselves taking repeated antibiotics because the problem never quite goes away. What Nature's Answer are using here is a very interesting 3-day regimen to help clear up urinary tract infections. Now, this can be a particularly useful thing if it's a recurring problem, which often happens when you're hitting perimenopause and the menopause stages in life. So what they're using is a various different extract combination using concentrated cranberry with D-mannose and vitamin C, and it's very fast acting as a result. Now, that is a really useful product for anyone to have on their bathroom shelf, because often you will find that these urinary tract infections kind of come in and hit us at random moments in time, and they are extraordinarily painful. So you want to have something fast acting to ensure that we can sort them out. So if you're interested in any of these brilliant supplements, or specifically the UT Answer, then do please pop over to John Bell and Croydon, Whole Foods or bodykind.com and find out all about how their products can help you. And now back to the podcast. Brilliant. So easy to take,
Really
easy to transport, not a problem.
No, and people with the powders, again, the research showed that most of us have got very full supplement cupboards with lots of pills in that we forgot why we bought them for.
And people don't take, yes.
And they don't take them. And the interesting thing about powders is that you can kind of hook them to an existing habit. So you can add it to your plant-based milk, you can make protein balls, yogurts, smoothie balls, pancakes. People actually put it into soup, say if you break your fast with something savoury, which can be really helpful.
And that doesn't disintegrate the power of what they're doing.
As long as you're not putting it in, as long as you're not boiling it or baking it, you can add it as something cool.
So even if it's
warm
hot soup that you've just made, you can
let it warm
it in,
let it cool a little bit and let it be warm, and then you can sprinkle it in.
Coffee?
And people do coffee. I mean, the only thing I say about coffee, and again, this will be not a surprise to you, is just looking at your cortisol. So it's when you're taking that coffee really in the morning, because quite often we're trying to encourage people. We've got some cacao, for example, in the Peri Boost, and it's actually an energising formula in itself. So we'd probably say take it aside from coffee.
Okay, but basically easy to incorporate, because that's one of the key things, as you say, because often these supplements get bought because they go, oh yes, and then they just sort of sit there. Or I found this many times in my life that I will suddenly, when I'm in my normal routine, no problem, and then all of a sudden, like for example, tomorrow I'm travelling. Today I'm in London. I don't live in London, I live in Somerset. I travelled late last night, and then suddenly I'm off kilter. Like, haven't had lunch today. Now, I, by the way, advocate making sure that you put your meal breaks into your diary, and I tell people to do that. And today I am guilty as a human being and a working mother that I didn't. And today's been a bit of a weird day because I was at an event this morning and like we wanted to speak, trying to sort our diaries out. So lunch I went to Itsu next door to have lunch and my stomach felt very queasy. So there was no lunch because I was like, I can't face it. So therefore supplements disappear down the wayside, but actually the fact that these are easy and you can transport them easily, they're not in liquids and things.
No, and I think, you know, again, it's hooking it to a habit, and it's, I mean, I'm exactly the same as you, but when I'm having a busy period, I'll make them into protein balls because then they're just in the fridge. You just grab a few and you just go.
And the results.
Yeah.
So I'm still going to talk about these parties, guys. We're going to end with the party bit, but I want to understand. So now we understand the reason behind you making the product and your own personal story, and then what the product consists of. So then, the results, people start taking it. What's happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really heartwarming, and I think for me that's been the mission from day one is kind of a world where women can be well, but also where they're seeing the results themselves to whole food led nourishment, because I think that's the other thing. So often we stagger into this phase of life. We have to relearn our attitudes to food. We're often punishing ourselves. We're often honestly, I mean, when I think back to some of the diets I did, I did so many, but my favourite being that one where you lie down and your stomach's supposed to be sort of like flatter if you lie down for an hour before you go out, which is just obviously absolute rubbish. But I used to do it religiously.
Did it work?
Well, no. I mean, I suppose I wasn't eating for an hour before I went out. That's probably the only thing that happened. But yeah, all of these things you have to unlearn in terms of, you know, the sugars, the sort of the benefit of sugar free, and all of this stuff we sort of stagger into midlife with, don't we? And if you can kind of fall back in love with the role of food, I think that's what I get really excited about with our botanicals, because that's really what we're doing, is we're harnessing that. And then we do these product impact studies, and they're small scale, they're not clinical trials, but again, as a researcher, actually, what I love is it's the real world. So it is people that forget to take it for a couple of days. It is people that go on holiday, and then you see the results. Because actually, the challenge sometimes with clinical trials is they're quite rigorous in the sense that they've put you in a frame of mind, and we don't have that frame of mind when we buy supplements from the supplement aisle.
We do to start with.
We do. We hope,
and then life takes over.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then you forget.
Exactly. So all of the product impact study work we do, we publish on our site, and we see phenomenal results. But also we have an ongoing tracker, and about 30% of our customer base will track their symptoms, and that's so helpful to us as well, because we get to see where you know, people are seeing results and when for different types of symptoms, which you know, so we're sort of with the cluster symptom capsules, that was what's so exciting. It's like we were able to go, this is what we need to do next, this is what our community is telling us they're struggling with, and this is where it should go next. So I don't really feel like I'm a founder of anything, really. I'm kind of like almost a custodian of all of this data coming in.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
You just kind of, because people go, you're the ringleader, and I'm like, no, it's just me. It's just me. Just because, you know, women are often quite self-effacing. Now, this is a key thing, because it's going to take us into this party thing we're going to talk about. But is obviously it's the community that enforce the efficacy of what you're talking about, because we can give you scientific studies till you're blue in the face, but if people don't repeat purchase, then it clearly doesn't work, because to get through the obstacles that life throws in our way, so someone's come into your brand and they've gone, oh, actually that sounds great, I'm going to buy that, so they buy it, and then they want to take it, and then just as I've explained, life takes over, you're here, there and everywhere, you've forgotten to pack it, you're away for 4 days, you think, oh no, and you've got all that to contend with, or you're I don't know, you skipped breakfast that day because you had to get up at 5 and you didn't think about it because you were dealing with 3 children, she says from personal experience, trundling everyone in the car with everyone kicking and screaming, and you think, oh, I forgot all about myself, and you've had to you've got to overdrive all of those factors to the point at which I, as your customer, a month later, am about to reorder, and the only reason I'm going to do that is because I have noticed a difference. So how big a community, sort of percentage wise, has kind of come out of this, because you're up against quite a lot of life factors to get these people into what then becomes this party, she says.
Yeah, and I think also it's such a swirly space, the menopause space, isn't it? I mean, you know, I think it's become, unfortunately, a sort of a marketing person's dream.
Yes,
and so
it's a Me Too land, and it's very, very crowded, and there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of people peddling fear, and a lot of big companies going in there with big budgets, drowning out the narrative, and also quite a lot of celebrities can also, if lots not, but lots yes, drowning out the narrative as well.
And there's a lot of snake oil. You know, I'm the first to say it. In the supplement space, it's really hard. There aren't the guardrails, and you know, it's hard for women to navigate to something that is going to work. And you're right, I think the community aspect of what we do reassures people because they don't have to buy. I am the world's worst salesperson.
So what is the community? Talk to us now about this.
Yes.
How does this work? I'm a Liminal customer. I'm very happy with my brand.
Yeah.
And what am I doing?
Well, if you subscribe, which many of our customers do, to your point around efficacy,
And it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, and they get it, you know, every quarter or every month, depending on how they want to do things. And then we layer up. You know, so we practice what we preach. Every month we have Menowell masterclasses where we invite, you know, the really interesting experts in to teach us things, and that's the joy of my job. I just get to listen to amazing people. Like, I know. Like you. And I'm just like, I just sit and absorb it, and I was like, great. So that happens every month online, and also our community often votes for that as well. So
Great.
You know, it's everything from, you know, we've done cold water therapy, we've done sophrology, which was new to me.
Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
What is
exactly.
this? Hang on a minute. It's
This
unusual
is,
for me to not
yes.
know some weird and wonderful technique. What is this, please?
So sophrology is it's kind of like a blend of psychology, a little bit of tapping, manifestation. It's a really interesting, and it's so. I'm probably going to misattribute this, but the wonderful lady that came on to our Menowell session to teach us about it was saying it's so sort of well evidenced in Switzerland. You can actually get it on insurance.
Wow.
And she's an amazing lady. I'll have to share her details with you.
And anyone listening or watching, I'm sure you can go to your website to see that, because I've never heard of this before. I'm like, ooh.
It's really interesting. Again, you know, these science-backed practices, but tapping again is really fascinating.
Tapping's brilliant.
Yeah, and we were saying before we went live, I think the way I found my way to you actually was someone gifted me your bamboo tapper, just as I was really on my knees actually with my own perimenopause journey.
I'm so glad I could help.
You really helped.
Gets me up in the morning, trust me.
And it was a Christmas present from this amazing lady, and this thing arrived, and I have to say, I was like,
what the hell is this? Is it a sex toy?
Is it a broomstick? What's she trying to say to me?
Yes, exactly.
And it sort of taught me to be curious, and I think that's a really important thing about our community. So our community, to answer your question, you know, you subscribe to the blends or not. You attend these monthly workshops. You can join the lives that we have, which are all free on our Instagram channel, where we're talking to amazing people, as well as, you know, holding these hour-long, quite science-based sessions on Zoom as well. And then we have started in the last year hosting hormone house parties. Which...
now we get to it, ladies and gent.
Please come, gents.
It's not just one guy. There are more than one. But anyway, you are the minority. Now, these hormonal house parties. Now, producer James, who I'll let people know, probably a secret that's not that secret. He's also a DJ. And I said to him, "You've got to DJ." I could just imagine poor old James, like with at a hormonal house party. He said, "You know what? I'd love to do that." So we're going to have to get him on. But this sounds absolutely brilliant. So tell me about the hormonal house parties, and please, can I come? And when's the next one?
I insist that you come to the next one. But the philosophy.
I'll be on a podium.
I mean, I think the insight came again as a researcher. You know, there's no doubting that this phase of life can be swirly and challenging and frightening and really
exhausting
hard.
and negative. Yeah,
but also and it can be amazing and liberating, and I fundamentally believe that we just need to fall back in love with our biochemistry as
yes, and we can. If you mix your stuff and my stuff together, you've got the holy trinity, literally, of matriarch energy.
Yes.
So yes,
and all of that matriarchal energy coming into a space is just the most beautiful thing. So these hormone house parties were designed really to encourage people to reframe the way that they were viewing their bodies and their minds, and also to sort of educate around how we can harness our hormones. So they usually begin with some music and a bit of a DJ set, but sometimes we do them in the morning. We're a little bit calmer.
And is it house music, or is it like 70s, or what do we do? Because not everyone likes house music.
No.
I like a bit of house music myself, but not everybody does, and that might off-put people.
No, it's not at all. So it's actually whatever. We tend to go and be hosted by other communities. So for example, last Friday we were in a beautiful community in Brighton called Humankind. They did have a proper DJ set. It was like, I felt like I was 14 again, sneaking out to a rave. That was amazing. But other times it's very gentle, you know, almost soporific music, and depending on the mood and the community and also what the focus of the panel will be, we will then do a bit of a shakedown, maybe some meditation to bring ourselves into ourselves, because we've often kind of careered in from, you know, whatever we were doing 10 minutes before. Even if it's a morning thing, we would have been, you know, solving everything
morning
before
problems.
we arrive. Yes, exactly.
Or lunchtime problems, or afternoon problems, or evening problems. We are the solution to everything problems.
We are the glue.
So we shake all those problems off.
So we do a good old shakedown, and then it's an interactive panel chat. So we've got one actually coming up with like Melissa Hemsley and
I love her.
Danny Binnington, who's created this amazing charity called Menopause and Cancer. Last Friday we had a phenomenal acupuncturist and 2 GPs talking about, and really our objective is bring together phenomenal humans to help us take that 360 view and encourage the women in the community to share their stories and to celebrate what it is, because every time you share a story you're basically leaving a light, I always think, for the people that follow, and someone in that room will need to hear your experience. Someone in that room will not have recognised the symptom that they are.
I'd like to talk to you about our 2 wonderful sponsors, because we don't take on anybody, you know, we're very picky here. So the first sponsor is the Naked Pharmacy. Now, the reason we love working with them so much is because on this podcast we cover a wide range of health advice. I mean, from any given week I'm going to be talking to you anything from shingles to sinusitis to eating chia seed rye bread in order to get good bowel movements in autumn, to decluttering, to a myriad of different things. And you need a partner that can kind of run with you at the same time. And the Naked Pharmacy is just that, because they have supplements for everything, which means whatever topic we're talking about, you can pop over to the Naked Pharmacy and they will have supplements to support this information. Now, not only that, they are very content rich. They have an actual pharmacy, which is what's so great. So just as we as a brand here on Own Your Health are very keen to answer all your questions and to keep the dialogue going with you, to offer the advice as much as just products themselves, the Naked Pharmacy are the same. So they have the products to match the content, but they also have the expertise as well. Now, they cover anything from stress to sleep to mood to energy to gut health to weight management, and pretty much everything else besides. So they're also going to give you the support as well. And they're offering us a 20% discount. If you use KT20 at checkout, which is at thenakedpharmacy.com, and you pop in KT20 at checkout, you will get a 20% discount. So we're really picky about who we partner with, because I want to make sure that when I'm partnering and promoting something here to you, my audience, that I endorse it wholeheartedly, and I genuinely think it's in your interest to know about it. So let's talk about Meda. Now, Meda Skincare was set up in 2009 by Dr. Tina Meda, and the reason I love this brand so much is because it's really very much focused on finding holistic and natural solutions to your skincare. And she has a few really cool, iconic products. The first one, which is the one that she started with, which is this probiotic exfoliating Enzy peel mask. What it does is it works in conjunction with the microbiome on your skin. Now, this is really important because most of my audience is sort of 40 plus. So anyone that's 40 plus is likely to have put chemicals on their skin over the years, because that was the skincare that we were sort of introduced to in the bad old days of the 20th century. Now, that's not great, because when you strip the microbiome off your skin, what happens is then that gets replaced by a whole load of chemicals. And that's not great, because basically everything's stripped off and chemical dependent. So what happens with this Enzy peel mask is that it basically supports the health and diversity of your skin's beneficial bacteria. Now, this is important because I'm talking to you about this in the autumn. And autumn is very much a time of the metal element, which is to do with your lungs and your large intestine and the immune system. And microbiome, which sits on the surface of the skin and is not to be stripped off, has a direct relationship with the lungs, because the skin is the second lung. And the lungs, in turn, have the secondary organ of the large intestine, which is where vast quantities of this microbiome are hosted within the body. And this is all the good bacteria. This is all the good stuff. So we really don't want to be stripping this stuff out. So Meda has a brilliant quiz, which will help you establish exactly what it is that you need to be adding to your skincare routine. But the hero product that she launched with back in 2009, which sort of got her into the public space, is very much this Enzy peel mask, which is probably the thing that I use the most, and I really, really enjoy using, and you can really feel it sort of working into the skin. So a brilliant, brilliant brand. I really, really endorse this brand. I think it works very much as regular skincare, but also treatment skincare as well. And I'm all in favour of regulating the biome back into your skin if you've been using chemicals. Now, let's just pause on that for a sec. This is really important, because if you go back to my kind of narrative about the emancipation of the female in the last 100 years. Now, don't forget, that didn't just start with the suffragettes. There was a whole load of things going on before that. But the suffragettes really, with the vote, gave you the right to an opinion. That was what that was about. Now, the suffragettes is a big deal for me because my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather were key members of the suffragette movement. So it's like it's a point of real family pride and also ancestral heritage, which kind of carries in me. So I kind of feel my ancestors kind of like vibrating in pride at the back when I start talking about them. But the thing is that the emancipation has not yet finished. And I think another thing about women of our generation was we were growing up with a queen and a female prime minister. Now, I'm not arguing as to whether that was right or whether they did a good... That's not my point. The point is they were in position and they did it. Okay. And that kind of gave us a sort of false security that we were indeed equal. We were told we were. You know, I was very lucky to have a very, very enlightened father, and we had a very good education, and my parents sacrificed vast amounts. In fact, I'd argue my mother is in an early grave because of it, but we got one, and it was a girls' school. And consequently, my whole narrative until I started to work was you're equal. And I thought I was until I started to work, and then I started to study cinema, and then I realised that was absolutely not true whatsoever. Now, what's happened as a generation of women is we are finishing the process of equalisation for the next generation. We are equalising because we went into a narrative which was a patriarchal narrative, and what we're doing is shifting it into an equalised matriarchal narrative at the same time. We're not dissing anything, it's just it was too much. It was 100% of the half, and the other half had no presence. And it's only in the last 100 years that this has started to come to light, and it's only in the sense of our lifetimes are we living through the ending of that process so that the next generation can pick up where we've left off. So our lights, as you've just said, are there to say, this is what we've been through. This is what we have to do to look after our bodies. This is what we've had to navigate through to continue equalising, to ensure that, for example, the working day. So the working day that we go into is a day that's been structured around a male body type. The archetype of the working day is yang in nature, a break in the middle of the day, a break at the end of the day, a working career that sort of starts and ends and there's a retirement process. That's not the female archetype body. We're yin. Our bodies need to have little rests throughout the day. That doesn't mean we're lazy. It means we have tiny little pinpoints like quick cups of tea, quick short breaks, a 20-minute rest in the middle of the afternoon, which enables us to continue all the way through, which, by the way, is, as far as every single woman I've ever spoken to, but with no exceptions whatsoever, is indeed what we have to do. Okay, because you only need to look at the studies, and the majority of domestic duties are still carried out by the female counterpart. Now, I know that's also shifting right now, and that we're getting, it's not just mummy and daddy and 2 children. That's changing as well. That was the archetype of what we grew up into, but that's shifted in our lifetime. But the reality is that the majority is that it tends to be falling on the female, so that the only way we can cope and show the next generation how to equalise is by learning to navigate how to navigate our body types. And what we need to do is take nature's harvest and take it in relatively complex quantities in order to have the kind of the bounty of the garden coming in all at the same time, and not taking a silver bullet, like e.g. saying, I don't know, black cohosh is the answer to everything, and that's kind of the big bass drum. And it's like, well, no, because that's kind of like sort of, I don't know, having a boxing glove going at the body. It is like, yes, in some instances this is good, but actually our bodies are complex gardens and they need a range of things. And we take that in conjunction with all of the things that I talk about at the same time, which is, again, what we've got in common. Here we go. The tapper comes in. Yes, because if you're taking a supplement and investing in it, you need to ensure that, first of all, your digestive system digests it, and then your circulatory system moves it around the body and it reaches the cells. Because otherwise you're spending a lot of money on something which is not necessarily going to reach the parts that other supplements aren't going to get to. So this is important. And interestingly, these brilliant hormonal house parties, sounds so much fun, are using dance as a methodology. And dance is something that I absolutely love. And you're using lots of different dance.
Yeah, exactly. We're moving. I was actually listening to you talk, so I love your podcast. And
she's saying all the right things.
But that whole thing of what our bodies want to do, what they're designed to do, and that sort of that movement piece. And I think, that's the thing that we're trying to say to people is stay curious, accept that your body actually often knows what it needs. And one of the practitioners we work with a lot said to me, and it really stayed in my head right at the very beginning of my own sort of journey back to wellness, and she said, if you listen to your body when it whispers, it doesn't need to scream. And
oh, that is so. Who was this brilliant woman? Who said that? That's absolutely true.
So she's a lady called Heather, and she runs these amazing cold water therapy sessions. And actually, my father died just before I launched Liminal, and it's a nice story in the sense that I was taken by a friend who knows me very well to do something totally out of myself and uncomfortable, almost as a distraction. And we went and did the cold water sort of bath, and this was kind of, again, just before lockdown. The world was a bit weird, and we went to this random field in the middle of nowhere and sort of basically went through the process to sit in this ice bucket. I remember these two teenage kids sort of at the other end of the field just watching these middle-aged women going, what's going on? So she was the practitioner that led us through that training process, and then has subsequently gone on to be one of the favourite speakers in our Menopause masterclasses. She comes back every year, and she's worked out a way of doing cold water therapy remotely, which I just think is brilliant. She lives in Kenya, and so she has us all go through the experience. She teaches us the science, but then she gets us to put different body parts in so we can kind of learn the impact it has, and do it very gently before we then.
And that is so important. I remember my first experience of cold water therapy, which was many years ago. I was on a yoga retreat, and it was used as part of that. And I burst into tears before I'd even, just looking at the water. Yeah. I burst into tears. I ran a mile. I mean, I literally ran a mile. The thought of that going over my C-section scar, it was awful. And I don't think it was handled particularly well, and I didn't go in and then I felt like an idiot, and it was horrible, and I just felt I felt like a failure. And I thought, no self-care practice should ever make us feel like this. Life is a celebration. To have made it this far, I think we're all absolutely brilliant, and I'm just so honoured to be finally talking to you, Rebekah, because we've spoken many times online, and it's always such a joy, and we're always like, like this. So we finally had an opportunity to sit down and properly talk things through. So this, for everyone listening, is Rebekah Brown, who is the CEO and founder and kind of ringleader, shall we say, of Liminal, which is the most fantastic brand. Not only that, has got this most wonderful positive community attached to it, culminating in these hormonal house parties, which hopefully producer James is going to DJ out, because that would be fab, and he's out there not even listening. So he's supposed to be listening, he's not listening. Anyway, he'll listen to this later and go, shut up, Katie. And on that note, Rebekah, it's been a joy to have you on the podcast. I knew it would be. Thank you so much for all that you do for us. And everyone, it's a brilliant brand, not just in terms of the actual product, but actually the whole community that goes around it. And this is a very important aspect of our menopause care, that it is about going on to the positive message and going into the positive reinforcement. And yes, understanding that the symptoms are horrendous, and yes, they suck, but you're not alone. And there are brands and products out there that are really, really designed to help you, not just ours, but there's very many women and men out there helping us with what we're going through right now. And I try and bring them to your attention. Rebekah's bringing them to your attention. And from that, you'll find more people. So it's a really safe space for you. So Rebekah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And well done with your brilliant, brilliant brand. And thank you for being a friend of the podcast.
Thank you.